Hey everybody, welcome back to the show. This episode's rolling out a day later than I thought it would, but no big deal. Life happens and we move on. Today's guest is Josh Herum. Josh is a cinematographer based out of St. Louis, Missouri, but working globally, most recently on a couple of feature film projects out of Nepal, which is super cool. We spend a bunch of time unpacking that and his process there. We also discuss his path into the world of filmmaking and how he sorted out becoming a full-time director of photography. Thanks again for tuning in. If you like what you hear, please give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you're listening right now is great. We're also streaming this on YouTube, so if you happen to be watching there, a thumbs up, a subscribe, anything there will help boost us up as well. Again, my name is Drew English. Thank you for tuning in, and now on to the interview with Josh.
Dude, I just want to say thank you for being here and thank you for doing this kind of on short notice, but I'm really glad I could get you on the show.
Yeah.
For those listening, this is Josh Herum. He's a DP working out of St. Louis, Missouri, but as you'll find out, he's been kind of all over the place, most recently doing a bunch of work in Nepal. But before we get to that, right, just to give a little backstory. So you and I met very briefly at Masters of Motion 2019 in Austin, Texas.
Yeah.
So just give us like a brief history on like how you even got into filmmaking and found cinematography in the first place. Like how did that develop for you?
Yeah, so basically my parents wanted me to do like some sort of music stuff. So I tried all these different instruments growing up. I started with like saxophone and drums, guitar, finally landed on bass for a couple years and they paid for lessons and everything. I had a bass and an amp. And when I was 15, I started messing around with my dad's point and shoot camera that he had for his job or whatever. And fell in love with photography. And I was like, I gotta get a camera. And I want a camera that I can control a lot more than the point and shoot could. So a couple of my friends had DSLRs. I was into like skateboarding and kind of extreme sports at the time. And so I sold my bass and my amp and I saved up for a year and I got a DSLR. Yeah, from there I was kind of always had my camera on me and shot photos of my friends skateboarding and motocross, BMX, wakeboarding. And then from there, did that for a couple of years and started traveling the world in my early 20s. I lived in Germany for a year, lived in India for a year, China a year, and then came back to the States and lived in Nashville. But basically during that time, I got a new camera that could shoot 1080p video, a Nikon D600. And when I was living in China, I was kind of like, I had already been shooting some video with like an iPod Nano, I remember, and like a flip, one of those flip video. I don't even know what they were, but like, you know, the flip.
Oh yeah, man, the flip cams. Yeah, totally.
So, but then with the with the Nikon D600, I kind of thought, well, maybe I'll try to make a documentary. I know photography at that point. Now I had been shooting for like 7 or 8 years. I was like 23, 24, living in China. I was curating an art gallery with some other like young 20-year-olds. And so we would have different exhibitions every month. But yeah, so I just decided I'm going to make this documentary and went out and interviewed 7 Chinese people on what they placed their hope in. And my film was called Shiwang, Hope. And the people from very different backgrounds, like a underground break dancer to like a Buddhist monk who lived on a mountain for like 20 years. And I interviewed each of them and shot B-roll and then got my friend to like compose music on a piano and I edited it all and it got into a film festival in that city, the Suzhou International Film Festival, and I won like $800 worth of awards and took that money and bought a couple like Rokinon lenses, and that's kind of how it started. When I came home and I was living in Nashville and I shot a couple other like mini docs of different artists and did that kind of thing for a couple of years and didn't really know how to make money with it. And then 2017 is kind of when I really jumped out there and started freelancing. So yeah, that's kind of how I got into this.
So you kind of, from the beginning, were like in this environment that kind of fostered creativity, which is really cool. I feel like a lot of commonality there because I was all in on music for most of my early adult life. Started off playing saxophone, so I know how that goes. And then I'm a guitar and bass player, so like I totally know that side of things as well. Not so much a great drummer. But anyway, I find it very cool that you're like in this environment where creativity was fostered and that came from your parents. And I was lucky where I had folks growing up too that were very supportive of like what I wanted to pursue. So that's super cool. I am curious, before we even get further into filmmaking, how did living abroad for such an extended period of time happen? How did that kind of inform the creator you are now?
Yeah, I would say like it kind of has to do with my parents, but it kind of doesn't. So my parents were missionaries, Christian missionaries to the Muslim world. They went to Egypt when they were 26, and they had my oldest brother. He was like 6 months old. I'm the youngest of four. So by the time I came around, they had been missionaries for already like 6 or 7 years, working in refugee camps in Germany and Austria. So I was born in Germany, and I lived in Vienna till I was 5. I think that idea of living in foreign countries and seeing the pros and cons and different cultures, or not to kind of have this mentality of like America is the best and this is where we live, and these other countries don't have anything to offer. I feel like my parents were always cooking different, like Turkish food. I grew up eating like German food, Egyptian. So my parents definitely, like, with the food that they cooked, and even like I heard them speaking different languages growing up. Like my dad studied Arabic and Turkish and German. So I think all that kind of, and I always had this dream to go back to Germany, and when I was an adult. And so the other part that I was saying, it kind of doesn't have to do with my parents, because I kind of abandoned my faith that like they passed down to me. And without getting too spiritual on this podcast, but yeah, I when I was 18 or 19, like I had like my own spiritual experiences, and I needed to get out of the lifestyle I was living. I was kind of living like just a crazy party lifestyle and experimenting with drugs and all sorts of stuff like that when I was 18. And I needed to get away from all that. So I left, and how I left was I found this school that was on photography, but it was also like Christian based, and it was in a little town called Herum, Germany. And I went to that, and my life was changed. So the following years, I became a missionary myself and really studied Hindu culture in order to reach people with the gospel of Jesus, but in a way that's respectful to their cultural ways and isn't kind of just like beating people over the head with the Bible. I wanted to understand their culture, and then also I studied Hindi for that year and a half, and I speak Hindi pretty well, which has helped me now that I'm working back in Nepal, because a lot of people speak Hindi in Nepal.
Just the backstory and like how you lived your life for so many years, and how you wound up in all these different countries. I certainly have found so much value in being exposed to other people, other cultures, other languages, other cuisine, like all that stuff that you mentioned. So no matter the context, and no matter if that resonates with somebody listening to this or not, I think there's a lot of value in your upbringing, how you experienced life in those early years. So that's super cool and very interesting, just because it's a perspective that I don't understand.
Yeah.
So it's really cool to hear that. Being that you're rooted in St. Louis, how did you find the filmmaking scene there? It's not something that I'm privy to.
Yeah.
I know a couple of people in like the Kansas City area. I know there's like a scene there. I'm not super familiar with St. Louis. So how did you even get a foot in the door to filmmaking in St. Louis?
It's honestly hard. I mean, the Nashville is like artist hub, right? People are coming from everywhere around the country because of the music scene. And so if you're a new person there and you're like,
Oh, yeah.
hey, I'm a photographer, or I'm a, videographer, they're like, oh, well, you should meet this guy or you should meet this girl, like, so they connect to you automatically. And I found that in the like short year that I lived there, I had all these connections. But when I moved to St. Louis, people are kind of like, well, what high school did you go to? Like, it's like you're born and raised here. There's not many transplants. So it's really hard to make connections, if you're starting out from nothing. I was like a videographer just shooting a bunch of stuff for really really short shoots, like could be like a half day shoot with like a rapper, or could be like a wedding. Like I was picking up anything, and that a lot of that was through like Craigslist or just like looking around. Like it was tough, it was like a grind. And then I got tired of that, and 2018 I tried to like just cold email a bunch of like ad agencies and production companies, and there's actually quite a few in St. Louis. So I guess on one side, like with the filmmaking community, like you were saying, I would say like commercial, there is a good amount of like bigger, agencies and production companies that are working on like bigger stuff. So I like cold emailed 30 of them. Out of the 30, like 9 people got back to me. And then out of the 9 people, I had like 5 face-to-face meetings. And then out of those 5 face-to-face meetings, I got like 1 job. There's a lot of like crazy stories. Like I met these guys and I shot this music video for like $100 on my GH4, and it was like a 14, 16-hour shoot. We had to like drive through the night to get to like a location in the middle of nowhere, Missouri, that has this like castle, and we had to get there before sunrise. And that shoot, like I did in like 2017, and then like a couple of years later, that director ended up moving to New York and getting hired, and then he was like working with Netflix, and then remembered me, and like Netflix's Queer Eye came to Quincy, Illinois, and he hit me up to be like the behind the scenes cinematographer. So it's like those kind of things where you do one little job and you don't think anything's going to come of it, and you get paid like nothing or next to nothing. And then like years later, you never know where someone else's career is going to go. So I feel like it's a lot of consistency. But after 2017, 2018, I ended up taking a job at a local church and being their filmmaker for like 2.5 years. But the cool thing about them, and the only reason why I took the job, was because I asked them, like, can I keep freelancing? Like, that needs to be a priority. And they were able to work with me. So like it was like a full-time job, but there was a lot of flexibility in creating schedules. And if I got like a commercial or a music video or something, I could just block out those days and then get my work done for them, around that. So that's kind of how I did it. And then 2021, I left that job and went back to full-time freelance. And then my 2022 has been crazy, doing the 2 features in Nepal and a lot of other stuff. So 2022 is like the best year yet.
Yeah, the hustle's real. And, I hope not only contemporaries are listening to this, but also people that are maybe, on the come up with their career. Yeah, like you never know, that one person you talk to or that one person you do a really low budget job for might a couple years down the road hold the keys to the door you want to walk through. So so good on you for keeping the hustle alive. One thing I'm very impressed with, as I've, kind of kept up with what you're doing since we met face to face, is not only is your work great, and the visuals you're producing are top tier, and like that goes without saying. Like you're really creating great work. What's impressive to me is how you've been able to leverage like the social media side of things into at least from my purview, like really building an audience for yourself. And, I would assume that doesn't hurt when you go out for new jobs, different jobs, meeting new people, networking, what have you. It's like, I think I checked today, and on Instagram alone, you're up to almost 12,000 followers, which obviously, you and I both know follower count isn't everything,
Yeah.
but I've watched that grow in the few years
Yeah.
since we met. And I'm so curious because part of this is like, I'm curious, right? I want to talk to people that are doing something different than I am and like really understand what their experience is. I think my two big questions are like, how did you even go about growing that Instagram audience? If you had a process to do so, and how has that benefited you on the professional side?
Yeah. So 4 years ago, a little over 4 years ago, I had like my personal Instagram. And then I started posting like behind the scenes of back then, like maybe it was probably earlier, 2017. And I was shooting like that stuff that I was talking about, like very low budget, no crew. And I would post like stills of that or behind the scenes. But then I'd post like a photo of my wife and I on a date or at the beach or something. And at some point I was kind of like, these people started following me for these things. And then these people started following me for these things. So it's like, it's really hard to balance that. And so that's when I created a separate account. So I think that's one thing I thought of, and I saw other people do, is like kind of separate my personal and my professional. Because like the people who are following you for like, let's say your stills or your work or behind the scenes photos, like whatever your style is, I mean, not all the time do they want to see like your kids, photos of your kids or something. To me, I wanted to give people like behind the scenes of like how things are done, because that's something I would love to see from like a Chase Irvin or a Solomon. Like, no, if they were making stories every day while they were on set, like how cool would that be to me? But most of those guys don't. They're just busy. They maybe take one photo or one story. So that was kind of an intentional, and I gained on that first feature film that I got. Also, it's kind of interesting to people. It's like, how do you get your first feature as a DP? So I wanted to kind of document that. I think that was the first time I did where I had 5-6 stories every single day showing the on-set happenings. And that shoot was 50 days straight. So, and we were in the middle of nowhere. And anyway, so I think those are the kind of things I curated my professional account, and I kind of wanted to have a specific look and the type of post that I'm posting as well. Whether it's stills or behind the scenes or maybe camera rig photos. Some people maybe only do one of those or two, a different one, maybe only frames and not the triptych type where there's 3 frames. So I think I just kind of went with what I liked, and I wanted to keep putting that out there. And I don't know. Yeah, that's it. I guess I've had the Instagram for 6 years. And then the other thing is posting regularly. So on that one, on my personal one, I'll only post when I feel like it. But with that one, I treat it kind of more like a job where I have to, I'm posting it regularly. And I think that's how you grow, is just the consistency and then the type of content.
Yeah, that's really interesting to me because, as someone who feels kind of behind the curve on self-promotion as far as social media goes, it's so simple, right? When you say it, it's yeah, of course, that's so simple. You just thought about what you would want to see, and you're I'm going to create that for other people. And then you're just treating it like part of the job. Mm-hmm. And so you found a lot of traction, especially picking up that first feature. If you were just consistent and kind of thought about what you would want to see and shared that out, you found that really helped drive things from a following perspective. Has that increase in attention on what you're doing helped you professionally at all, or is it just kind of a nice to have?
Yeah, I mean, definitely when you reach out to somebody on Instagram and you have 300 followers, they're not going to take you that seriously, probably. Even if your work is great, they might just look at, okay, well, this guy wants to collaborate with me or whatever. But if you have 10,000 followers, people are much more likely to read that. So, I mean, it is kind of the follower count doesn't matter really, but it does to a certain subconscious degree. So I've had a lot of collaborations. On my last short film, I got to work with an amazing colorist, that Ryan Berger, and if I didn't have that following, I don't know if that would have happened. Or this composer that composed the whole score for my last short film, Autumn Swim is what I'm talking about. He's like in the UK, and he reached out to me. I get a lot of these people reaching out, and then I take the time and write back. That's the other thing I think I've found is like when I've reached out to people with large followings or different DPs I looked up to, and most of the time they're probably busier than I am. Maybe I don't know, but like maybe I'm at the career, like point in my career where I'm just kind of starting, so I have a bit more time. But I respond to almost every DM that I get, and so yeah, and I'll check out people's work. So if a colorist sends like a reel and wants to collaborate with me, that kind of stuff wouldn't happen to me when I even had like 1,500 followers or something. This next project that I'm going to be working on, like the director reached out to me on Instagram, and well, I guess it's not the next project, but the next feature film. But he had seen my work, I think, outside of Instagram, but then like that's the route that he took to write me. I mean, I like it. I find it fun too, just to be able to chat back and forth. Like the other day, I shared a frame from a different DP over in Manchester in the UK, and then we started talking, and like we talked for like 30 minutes over DM, and it's just nice. Like I asked him like, hey, what was the budget on that, and like how did you shoot it? What lenses were you using? Like those kind of conversations. So I find that it just creates like this community of filmmakers it's much smaller, like the whole world.
I mean, it is true, no matter the scale, I've found anyway, no matter the scale in which you're working, like the filmmaking world is truly small. I love the attitude that you have towards all of this. Like, I certainly don't want to make this whole episode about social media, but I think it's a valid topic to like hit on, because especially if you're like a visual creator like we are, right? It's definitely probably in the running for like, the platform that most people who are visual creators are going to share on. I absolutely love your attitude with it though. Your attitude is super healthy. I love that you take the time to write back to everybody. I think that's super important because everybody wants to feel like there's a connection, or at least that they're being heard.
Yeah.
Right. Everybody just wants to be heard. So I think that's really great. And I love that you're putting like a positive, like, I'm just going to have fun with this. And it gives me an opportunity to like talk to other people that maybe I wouldn't otherwise be able to connect with. So that's awesome, man.
Like social media is a great place to connect with other people, but then you also like, I'm looking at all these different DPs work and I'm like, dang, like I look at my page and I'm like, my stuff sucks, So you always have that like kind of a love-hate with social media, as like especially Instagram. But I try to be real on there. I think that's the big, especially with my stories. I feel like with my grid, I try to be as like curated as possible. But with my stories, I try to get like as real, and I can, share funny stuff sometimes and just be myself.
No, I totally get that. That's really great. And it's great that even though maybe it's not always the primary driver of you finding new jobs or new opportunities, it's like really, really great to have like an ever expanding calling card that someone can like, if they email you or they find your stuff somewhere else and then they go and like do a little research on you, that they then feel maybe a little more supported in their decision, saying, oh yeah, well,
other people,
I like Josh's work, and then look at this, he's got all this traffic and other people have gravitated towards it and so on and so forth. So that's really cool. Kind of to spin off of that, you've done one feature and one short film in Nepal. Did I have that right?
2 movies and then 1 short film in Nepal.
Oh, yeah. 2 features and 1 short film in Nepal. Okay, I was one off. How did the whole Nepal thing start? I just want to know all about it. Like, how did that first feature happen?
Yeah.
What was that experience like? what keeps bringing you back out there? I didn't even know there was a scene there. And it looks, from my perspective, that you're using a lot of local folks, that there's like some sort of infrastructure there. So I just want to hear about it.
Yeah,
you know?
I think this goes back to a different question. I never, I guess, got around to this part of what I was going to say is, so it was the question about how I started getting jobs in St. Louis. And I talked about, getting the job at the church for those 2.5 years. But even like since then, like when I'm not over in Nepal, a lot of my jobs are outside coming in. So like people find me through the internet. This one short film I shot in St. Louis, the director and producers were out of Oakland, California, and they looked for a DP in St. Louis and they found my work. And I did a BBC, like a second unit DP on a BBC documentary, like that was shooting in St. Louis. These people from the UK like reached out. Like that happened twice actually for a different television station over in the UK. So like my work has been like on broadcast television in England, but like I've never done something at that scale here in America. And then in Nepal, I'm like getting these films that are showing at theaters like all over the country and even around the world. But like I'm still like it's hard for me to actually find local work, which is that's kind of my new, I guess, struggle in 2023 is like, okay, I've done 2 movies now and a bunch of shorts, but like these local producers or directors like still aren't really hiring me. They have their go-to guys, there's a handful of DPs in St. Louis, and it seems like, so that there's still like a lot of room to grow as far as like filmmaking in St. Louis. But how the Nepal thing came around, it's really interesting. So in 2021, when I was at the church, I had this steady income and my freelance work was growing a lot. So I had a bit more money than I typically had. And I talked to my wife and I said, I want to invest in this camera, this Alexa Mini, and I believe it could be good. Like I can rent it out as a rental property, and then I can also use it on projects and either rent it to the production, or if it's a spec project, like I'm going to be able to shoot on an Alexa Mini, which is great. So I went through the whole process, and I have a video on my YouTube channel about that. But like I got a loan, got the camera, and I was on this group one day on Facebook, an Alexa owner group, and this guy was reaching out about renting an Alexa Mini for a feature film. So I respond to him, and he gets back and he's like, how would you feel about shipping it to Nepal? And I'm like, I don't feel that great about that. Like, I don't know if insurance and laws are even the same, or like if I had to, sue someone if they stole it, like, I don't even know if our lawyers can practice over there. I don't know. So I was kind of like, if you need like a camera op, or like kind of just like, I was assuming they already had a DP because now they're like, getting closer to production. And so he ends up running me back, and he's like, well, I see you're a DP actually, and our cinematographer's schedule might not line up. So, he sent me over the synopsis, and I was like super interested in it because I had lived in India before, and I actually had made a short film in this rural village in India in like 2016. So I sent him that, and I said, I love different cultures and like anthropology, so this is right up my alley, and he's like, okay, well, I'll get back to you. 3 months goes by. I don't hear from the guy at all. They end up hiring a different DP from New York City. He goes over there, starts like prep for a month, starts shooting the film, and ends up leaving the project like in the middle of it. So he shot like 16 days. The producer reaches back out after 3 months, and he's like, hey, this is what happened, and would you be willing to come like next week? And I'm like, well, that's a red flag, like, why did this DP leave in the middle of the project? So I found him on Instagram, reached out to him. Speaking of Instagram, reached out to him and said, hey, what happened here? So he gave me his version. And then I had the Zoom meeting with the production manager, the director, and the producer, and they gave me their version, and also, just a general meet and greet. And after it, I felt like I could trust the producer and the director. He was more like worried about, the DP previously was worried that he wasn't going to be paid, And then also there was a lot of conflict with the director, and he just really didn't believe, I think, that the director knew what he was doing. But that director is Nobin Suba, and he's been making films for like almost as long as I've been alive. So when I went over there, I had like the utmost respect for him. I came over there thinking like, this guy knows what he's doing. He's been making movies. He made different television shows in Nepal. And so, yeah, I accepted the job, but like, it was weird because like 16 days had already been shot. So I have to like do match shots to this other DP's work. And then the other thing was, I didn't have much time to prep at all, you know, because their schedule had been broken up for like 2 or 3 weeks. They were like waiting on me to come, and I had to get, you know, like my things in order and book the flights, and I had to wait for them to give me a down payment, because that whole thing is like, I at least need to know like these people are serious. And but yeah, I went over there, and the car ride from Kathmandu to where I was filming was like the worst experience of my life. It was like,
Oh no.
just going up and down mountains over and over, and it's like on bumpy roads. And by the time I got to the location, my head was just like spinning and throbbing. But like, it was really cool. I was there like in this really remote village. We lived in this like big concrete building. It was like a government building that they just got, like, you know, for production. And there's all these like concrete rooms. It was like really cold. There was no electricity. The only time we had electricity was if they ran the generator to dump the CFAS cards from the day of shooting. There wasn't even running water sometimes. Like in the morning, I'd wake up and I couldn't brush my teeth. I couldn't shower. Like I couldn't flush the toilet. Like it was like tough, and it was really cold. But then at the same time, like the people there were amazing, and also the environment. Obviously, you come outside and you're watching like the sunrise over like the Himalayas. So like Nepal has like 8 of the tallest mountains in the world, like including Everest. It's one of the most beautiful countries, and I already loved South Asian culture, and I spoke Hindi. So like it's very similar to like the 2 countries I lived in my early 20s. Like it's right between China and India, and the culture's kind of seeped in.
First of all, like the director DP relationship is specific to each project. So a lot of times that's just like, is it a good match? Is it not a good match? And sometimes it's just as simple as that. So, you know, the previous DP and the director, they just probably weren't as compatible as you were with that director. And your life experience and your background up to that point probably made you a better fit. I totally feel you on like on having the hardships of like no running water, no electricity, all that stuff. But also on the other side of that, it seems like more of an adventure to me.
Yeah.
And like I have no concept of what Nepal actually looks like physically, other than from what I've seen in like film or pictures or whatever. But to your point, it must have been freaking incredible to just see like that kind of natural wonder outside your door. So I think that makes probably the hardship all worth it. I do want to hear about, you know, what the film industry in Nepal is like, because you said the director's been making films for years and years and years. So clearly there's something there. And like I mentioned before, everything I saw like behind the scenes that you had posted seems to be like at least some sort of like creative filmmaking infrastructure there. So like what's the industry like there?
For sure. So Nepal is kind of funny because I didn't know that there was any films going on, like you said. I was the same way. And then I find out they've been making movies for like over 50 years. Like they've been doing it a long time, and it's kind of been in the style of Bollywood like the whole time. So like kind of a couple songs, some romance, some comedy, that kind of a thing for majority of it. But yeah, they have all the infrastructure. And the crazy thing is Nepal makes like 120 films per year as a country. And so they're constantly shooting. Like everybody, all the people I follow are like, yeah, I'm on another feature. And then the AC goes from that feature to shoot another feature. They literally work, like they only take a couple days break and see their family, but like they go back and they work again, like another feature after feature. That's how and it's pretty crazy. And the features, they don't have like crazy big budgets, but like they're kind of around the like $100 to $300 or $400,000 mark. But over there, the equivalent would be like a bunch of, like $1 to $3 or $1 to $5 million features. Like 100 of those being made a year.
It's just a staggering number of films being made in that country.
And it's a small country.
Like that makes absolutely no sense to me. I'm truly shocked that there's that much film production going on. I would assume, you can tell me if I'm wrong, but I would assume that like the level of freedom to be creative and like make some kind of unique projects is pretty high.
The first film, we were, like I said, in a very remote area. That film was funded actually by this one community, Rai people. It's spelled like RAI. Rai people are one of the people groups in Nepal, and basically what the producer did was find a Rai community in like Hong Kong or England or Japan or Australia, and he would get all these different Rai communities to invest in the film. So like maybe like the USA Rai community pledged $25,000, and then like the Australian Rai community, so he gathered all the funds like that, and they made the movie. So it's like kind of like a Kickstarter type thing, but with only Rai people giving.
I was gonna say it's kind of like crowdfunding in a way.
And so that one didn't have like that great of a budget, but it was still quite a bit. And we were out in the middle of nowhere. There was like 40 of us, like cast and crew, 40 or 50. And we were working in these really small houses that are like too short for me. Like I'm 6 foot and I'd be hitting my head all the time, like when I'm going out the door. And they burn fires inside the house. So like all that smoke, there's no chimney. So it all just fills in there, and then your eyes are watering and you're caught. Like I had to wear this like construction mask to try to deal with it. But it was some tough shooting conditions and just really small, tight spaces. And working with that director, he was super cool. He was very collaborative, and certain scenes he would have like a vision for and have kind of a shot list in his head. We didn't have any kind of like shot list or storyboard written out, and we didn't really have the time. By the time I got there, I had read the script like 2 or 3 times, but a lot of it was just communications on the day. We would go to the location, talk through the scene, see his blocking, and then if he had ideas, most of them I like just loved, and so it was easy to just say yes to him, And then if he didn't have ideas, the ideas I shared, usually he would like loved them. So it was a super easy collaboration. The only hard part of that film was it was a super foggy area, and a time of year. So fog would come in, and we'd wait for like hours of the day before we could shoot the next shot. And so our schedule got messed up. So I originally was supposed to be there for 40 days, with 30 of those being shoot days. And then I ended up being there 60 days total, with 50 of those being shoot days. So I shot 50 days straight. Well, we had 3 days of breaks. Like one of them I was sick and like throwing up and had a fever. One of them I was like a complete just storming, raining days. And then one of them was like a travel day. So really like, but 12, 15 days straight. There's no like weekends and stuff in Nepal. But I don't know. I don't mind it. I'm like, it's super fun. The crew and so that's one thing I will say. You're asking kind of how people are. Like the crew is like some of the most dedicated people I've ever met. Like I lined up this one dolly, like a push-in shot, and I wanted it completely centered on this like pond. Like it was like a fishing pond that they made, like in the side of a mountain or whatever. Well, I wanted the dolly right there. Well, there was these 2 small trees, like right in the middle where we would lay the dolly track. My guys dug the trees up, uprooted them, laid the dolly track. We shot the shots, and then they planted those trees back. Like that's the kind of stuff they do over there, man. It's really fun.
That's unreal. That's unreal. But I do appreciate that they save the trees and just move them out of the way for a minute to get the shot. That's pretty awesome. Man, I mean, we could probably go on and on about this, but there's some other stuff I want to get to.
Okay.
But it's so interesting to me, just because it seems like a different way of working and just like a whole different approach to like filmmaking as an industry in general. And I love like the whole team mentality. And I'm a big proponent of the whole concept of like safety in numbers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where if you're in a spot and you have a bunch of people that all have the same goal, or you're all looking out for each other and all trying to accomplish the same thing, it's like a really empowering feeling. And it really seems to pay off. Like everything I've seen, again, just on the social media side, seems like you've really built some like strong relationships. And, you know, who knows, maybe you're now the go-to de facto DP for Nepalese, film production.
Well, I'll say like, I don't think I can be, because just on a financial standpoint, the amount that they pay their DPs there for a full feature film, I can't even pay my bills for like 1 month. So like it only can be like certain productions that have a bit more money, so that even if I took like the lowest possible rate I could take, it's still more than like what they typically pay. So I don't think a lot of Nepali productions will bring me on, but I definitely do think, especially after the second film, which was Fulbari, that director's like Rambabu Gurung. He's one of the biggest well-known directors in Nepal, and actually has the highest grossing films of all time. And as far as, you know, box office, and so he's super well known, and I shot his last movie. So a lot of people know of me, but not everyone, I guess, could afford that. And that's not even saying like I make a lot of money, but it's like just because like the industry there, the rates are way lower. So, but that film ended up, Fulbari, like was screened all around the world, like in Australia and then in America, Canada, UK. I just saw it today. It's screening in Portugal. Like, so a lot of the screenings have finished now, but like there's still like some popping up. So that was cool. It was my first movie to like ever, because the first one's still in post-production, A Road to a Village. But Fulbari, the second one I shot, ended up releasing before the first. And it's had a great release. So that's just pretty cool.
That's cool, man. Yeah, right on. I love how kind of that whole experience, or this part of the episode, really like ties together a lot of the things we started with, where it's like, even going back to the point of like, you know, you do the job for $100, but you never know who you're working with. It's like, even on the other side of the world, like a lot of these jobs are happening off of recommendation, just based on other people's experiences with you. So it's really cool that you're just finding opportunities to put your best foot forward when you can afford to. And that seems to be paying dividends, not just monetarily, but also in other ways, creatively, or, you know, building your portfolio, being in the same industry, and also being a parent, because you have kids and I have a 1-year-old. And you saying that you were on a production you were gone for 2 months, basically.
Both times, 4 months total.
Right. One of the things I always think about is like, as I continue to level up in my career, right, the demands of this industry are usually you're away from home. So I think coming off of like work talk and more onto like real life talk for a second, it's like, how have you managed to like keep a home life, you know, like how have you managed to like build this career and also manage like being a father and being a husband and like all the real stuff that like kind of, I feel like, gets glossed over a lot of times. You seem to be managing it really, really well. So I'm personally very curious, and I'm sure a lot of people listening would be as well.
Not really. I don't think I'm managing it very well. I mean, my wife is like an amazing woman. So I will say that off the bat. So when I left for the first feature film, like my daughter was only 4 months old, and my son was
Wow.
like a year and a half. Or no, he was 2. And then the second time I left, my daughter was like 10 months old, because that, like, basically I shot for 2 months, January through March, came home, but I also went to the Congo last year for like a 10-day trip. And then anyways, but for 5 months, basically I was home, and then I went back like August, September to Nepal again. I mean, it's definitely, it takes a toll. Like, it's hard. I find that, like, especially when I come back from like this crazy experience of shooting and being on like these manual cranes flying over like mountains, like I'm on this high, when I come back. Like, I work with these same people. We become like a family. The second movie was like 32 days. So still like a long time to be living and traveling everywhere with the same group of people. And you become really good friends.
Yeah.
And Nepal really loves like a kind of a work hard, play hard type mentality. So like everyone's always hanging out after every shoot day. It's not like you go back to your own hotel rooms. Most of the time it's like, you're hanging out and having a beer or playing cards, whatever. So it's hard to kind of live like that, FaceTime in the morning before set, FaceTime at night for a couple minutes, like while I'm in the Jeep being like taken to the location. When I came home, yeah, it's definitely like you feel kind of weird and disconnected. At least I did for a couple of weeks, and trying to figure out how to get my bearings. Like, okay, you're in dad mode. I'm not used to like listening to toddlers screaming all the time. So it's definitely been like it's like 2020, like we were home all the time. So you get used to it. And also you're just like playing and whatever. Like, I love my kids. They're super fun. But at the same time, when you've been away and you've been kind of living without that for a couple of months, and then you come home and you're like, whoa, this is a lot of stimulation and a lot of responsibility, and trying to keep them from hitting their heads, or, like you got to keep them fed, got to keep all that kind of stuff. And so, yeah, I mean, it's definitely been an adjustment. I wouldn't say I've done super well at that, but like, I don't know. I don't know really what else to say about it. But I think my wife was very supportive. I will say that, and she understands my, like, actually, one thing I will say is, like, I went from working at this church for 2.5 years as their video guy, just doing local jobs. Now I'm shooting 2 movies across the world, and it's only been like 5 or 6 years since I started this freelance journey. So I think it hit us really quick, where like a lot of DPs maybe work their way up, and so they don't get their first opportunity to shoot a feature till maybe their kids are a little bit older, and it's a bit easier to juggle. But like with having like, there's something about that like infant toddler that is like, it's all hands on deck, right? Where like a 5 to 10 year old, you can probably, they can do their own little thing. So yeah, that's been really hard, because even my wife was like, when I married you, I didn't know I was gonna be like a single mom, like a third of the year. So that's like something she literally said this, in our conversations. And that's really hard. I don't know how we're balancing it, but I will say, like, we took a long vacation in Orange County, like right after the second feature, and we were trying to get passports done so that they could come over there and visit, like in the middle of the second one, since it wasn't as like rural and like no, facilities, like. But it didn't work. You have to have both parents have to be there to sign, and so we just got that taken care of. So now they all have passports that are coming soon, and so if I get more features, we'll be ready, and maybe they can come visit in the middle. So it's broken up more.
The best assessment, because you're a little bit further down the parent road than I am, but it's like you just do the best you can. And I think that's the moral of the story. It's like you always do the best you can, and you're always trying to figure out like what's working, what's not working, how can you do better. Having a great partner is certainly a huge part of that puzzle. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I was just curious because I think from my purview, I mean, I have a few friends who are also in our line of work that have kids and have a family, and it's kind of a similar conversation where it's like it's kind of all mayhem all the time. But I think a lot of people in our business don't do the kid thing, don't have families, and it's like they have a totally different experience. So it's purely out of curiosity, and I'm sure there's other folks listening that maybe at least feel like a little kinship, like, oh, okay, not everybody has it figured out.
It might, I don't know. Like, I would never encourage people not to have kids, but at the same time, I kind of would do that just because of that career is really tough, and it's only going to get tougher. Like I'm working on these films for 2 months. Like people like Deacons or somebody at that level are working on a film for like 6 months, or like could be even a year if like the pre-production is happening overseas and like location scouting and all that kind of stuff. So like, yeah, it can only get harder. And obviously like your family can come with you and move to those places, but if you're shooting like Dune or something out in the middle of the desert, I don't know if your like kids will want to be there for a year or like 6 months. So how do you do that? I don't know.
Yeah, man. I think I think the moral of the story is, again, there's no right answer. Everybody's just kind of figuring it out as they go. Yeah. But you just keep going because you have to, and you look back in 10 years, 20 years, and it'll all be worth it. Just before we wrap up, what's coming down the road for you? What are you up to next? What does 2023 and beyond look like for you? Like, give us the goods.
Yeah. 2023 has been off to a slow start. It's been interesting because I've had a lot of these where a job seems like it's coming through, but then like, oh, the schedule got pushed to this date. Now, I don't think it's going to work out to bring you on. Or like, I've had a couple of those. I had this feature-length documentary that like, due to the subject matter, the people who were going to be interviewed, like their lawyers kind of got involved and were like, don't talk about that, don't do this. So that one got like canned. And but the one project I do think is going to happen, which I'm really excited about, is another feature film, an action film, half in Malaysia and half in Nepal, it's a Malaysian film, but like some of the locations are in Nepal, and I think that's how the director found me, was from the trailer of one of the movies I shot. So this would be the first time, and he really is going to be working with a lot of like special effects. So this isn't like confirmed yet, but definitely really far down the like conversations, and really it's mostly just the finances have to come in, and then they can book me. And but yeah, the director and I are like gelling really well. And so yeah, a lot of special effects, a lot of martial arts, and a lot of explosions and car chases and all this kind of stuff that I didn't think I was going to be able to shoot for years to come. And it's nothing like the work I've done so far. So he's putting a lot of faith in me to be able to do it. A lot of YouTube. I started this YouTube channel, and I never wanted to do that, but there was a lot of questions from Instagram. Like people would DM me certain questions over and over, like, how did you get your Alexa Mini, or how's it working out? Or how did you like that scene in that film? So I did like a couple cinematography breakdowns of the different films I did last year. So like one short film that's gone into a bunch of bigger festivals here in the States, and then the 2 features, and then a music video was the last one. So yeah, I'm trying to create like at least like a video every 2 weeks, and it's all like related to my life and my career. It's not going to be like a camera review or something like that. I think the next one though, I am going to talk about like my Leica M10, but it's going to be more on like my history of photography and how I've developed as a photographer like alongside of being like a cinematographer. So yeah, that's kind of what I've got going on.
That's super cool, dude. Good on you for starting to get all these features under your belt. I mean, that's really great. I'm super happy for you, especially like explosions and car chases. That's what we aspire to, right?
I mean,
and yeah.
I don't aspire to that, but it sounds like a lot of fun. Like the kid who grew up watching like Lethal Weapons and stuff like that. So I'm down for it.
Totally. Yeah. And I saw you started the YouTube channel. I'm glad you brought it up because it looks like you've gotten some decent traction off of it. And I like that you're going into it with some like practical intention, that it wasn't just like, oh, I want to just start a YouTube channel for the sake of starting it. It was like, well, I'm getting all these questions. Let me like actually do something pragmatic and like answer those questions. Excuse me. Sorry, something in my throat. Answer those questions for people in one spot where they can see it. And then you've gone into, further down the road with it, being intentional about like, nobody needs another camera review video. Like, it's more about your own experiences and just like creating this little like forum for yourself so people can come in and like just kind of learn from your experience. And it seems like you like to share that and like try to educate people off of like your own personal experiences, which is super cool. I really dig it. Before I let you go, if people want to find out more about you, where can they find you online or on social media?
Just my name, joshherum.work, or joshherum.com. That's spelled Herum. Josh is the normal way. And on there you can see all the social media, like the YouTube link or Instagram. So I think that's the best place. That's where like my reel and all the work that I'm, I guess, the most proud of stays on there.
Before we go, do you have any parting thoughts, any words of wisdom, anything you want to say to the audience? If not, that's also okay.
I don't know. I guess like go hug your partner. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, I don't think I have anything. Go out there and like go shoot with what you have. That's what I said on my YouTube videos. Because a lot of people they're always like thinking they can't do it without the proper gear or something. But it's like, hey, if you have like a 5D Mark III, like go out there and make a short film. And, that's how everyone starts.
I think it's good advice because it goes across mediums too. It's like just create with what you got.
Yeah.
At least to get started. I mean, there's nothing stopping you but you. So that's really cool, man. I really appreciate you taking the time out to do this. And thanks for dealing with my crazy schedule today. But I'm glad we were able to hop on and have a conversation.
Thank you.
All right.
All right, folks, there you have it. That was my interview with cinematographer Josh Herum. I'll put some links in the show notes, but in case you missed it, you can find out more about Josh at joshherum.work. And his Instagram profile is instagram.com/JoshHerumDP. That's HERUM for the last name. If you want to find out more about this show, you can head over to nosetpath.com or find us on Instagram at nosetpathpodcast. And if you want to find out more about me, your host, Drew English, you can check out drewenglish.com, or my Instagram is drewenglish with 2 H's at the end. Thanks so much again for being here, and we'll see you next week.